Hey everybody, it's probably no surprise by now that Windows 11 in some form has been leaked. Yes, it's out there right now on the internet, and if you go to your favorite browser and have a look for the Windows 11 ISO, you're likely to find it. And I have myself a copy here, and obviously as the title of the video here suggests, we're going to take a copy of Windows 10, install it in a Hyper-V virtual machine alongside a copy of Windows 11, and we're going to take a look at what the differences are. So let's get going. So when setup starts, we will be asked to enter in a serial number or a license key if we have one. I'm going to skip that section for the moment, and we're going to move on and choose the operating system. I'm going to go with Windows 10 Pro for both Windows 10 and Windows 11. Now on the left, you're going to notice that Windows 10 is what we're installing. On the right, we're installing Windows 11. We're going to do an advanced installation and just install to our C drive on both platforms. So again, there's no favorites, they're all going to be the same. And there goes our files ready to be installed. Now it'll be interesting to see which one is actually quicker, if there's any major difference. Now do bear in mind as we do run through this, this is a development copy of Windows 11. So the end result is likely to be very different. So we have to take it all with a grain of salt at this point in time, and we'll see what we see. Well, as we can see at the moment, they're pretty much running neck and neck, although it looks like now Windows 11 seems to be just inching ahead slightly in how fast it's going. And fast forwarding to the end, it looks like the Windows 11 build is just a tad quicker than Windows 10. So look, it doesn't take long to install Windows anyway, but hey, if it's quicker, that's great. All right, now Windows 11 is obviously getting ready to restart. Windows 10 is still just struggling a little bit behind, but that's okay. It's neither here or there really. Now with Windows 11, obviously you can see a little bit of a new animation appearing there on the right, and we've got these nice rounded window edges. Gotta say, we are starting to look a little bit sexier, a little bit like a Mac. So the first thing is to identify what country we're installing this from. For me, that is Australia. And of course in Windows 10, there's no difference there. We're just looking at a lick of paint here. It's just cosmetically different on the right-hand side with Windows 11. It certainly does look nicer, in my opinion at least. I like it, but it's really serving no purpose at this point. We're just installing a copy of Windows. We'll choose our keyboard. US layer is fine. We will skip adding a second one. You could certainly do that if you like. Okay, so how would we like to set up our new copy of Windows 11? We can set it up for personal use, or we could set it up for a work or a school. I'm going to go with personal use. And of course, over on the left with Windows 10, there's really no difference here. We can set it up for personal or an organization. Now next we'll need to add in our account. Now we've got a couple of options here. We can add in a Microsoft account, which is a pretty good idea. I mean, it's certainly something that we're all accustomed to doing nowadays because it's going to sign us into all of our services, our OneDrive and everything like that. If you don't already have an account and you want to create one, you can certainly do that as well. We could sign in with a security key if that is an option, and we can create an offline or a local account as well. Now, obviously Microsoft are trying to discourage that behavior nowadays because, they want you tied up in their ecosystem. They want you to have an Outlook account. They want you to have OneDrive. They want to suck you all in and get you to subscribe. But the benefits of doing that are pretty good in my opinion. So I'm going to sign in with a Microsoft account, one that I already have. So let's just do that, and we'll do it on both. And finally, as part of this account creation process, we will create a PIN. Now, over on the right here with the Windows 11 build, you can see that it's telling me welcome back. And the reason why I've got a couple of options here is because I have actually installed Windows 11 before we actually recorded this video. And I signed in with a Microsoft account. So it's obviously saying with our top option here, we can restore from a previous desktop where we may have synced our files to OneDrive. Now, alternatively, we can set this up as a new device, and I'm going to do that for the purposes of this video. And that now brings us to the same settings here for Windows 10 and Windows 11 to choose the privacy settings for our device. So there's nothing that's really changed here. Again, we're just looking at a little cosmetic difference with Windows 11. And I'm going to turn most of these settings off here for this introductory version of Windows 11. I'm going to leave the location data on, turn everything else off. We will do that as well on Windows 10. Okay, looks good. We'll accept that. And now we can choose to customize our experience. And what this is going to do is allow us to identify what we're going to use this for. I'm going to select everything: games, we're going to do family, schoolwork, entertainment, the whole lot. And what this will do is once we've installed Windows, we're going to see a few additional things installed to our start menu. So for example, we may see Solitaire on our start menu if we've chosen to select games. We may see a music application if we've chosen to select entertainment, and so forth. So whilst it's completely optional, not a bad idea if you're new to Windows. That way you can get a glimpse at what's available. All right, now the next window on both, if we go to Windows 10, we have an option here for setting up our phone from our PC. I'm going to skip that for now. On Windows 11, however, we are now asked, do we want to use OneDrive? Now, I am going to choose to automatically store my files in OneDrive, just so we can see what that does behind the scenes. And moving one step along on the Windows 10 side, we do get that same option to back up our files with OneDrive. So I'm going to choose next for both. So we will use OneDrive with both. And behind the scenes, I've just logged into my OneDrive account that I'm using with both of these two copies of Windows. That way you can just see what happens if any files or folders get added to my OneDrive. Now, as part of the Windows 10 installation, we do have an option here to get an introductory offer to the Xbox Game Pass for $1. I'm going to say no, we don't see that with Windows 11 just yet, but that may very well change, obviously, once this product nears production. And the final step with Windows 10 is to allow us to turn on Cortana, so Cortana can then assist us with voice experiences. So I'm going to say no, thank you. And that's pretty much it. Now, our PC is going to do its thing, get everything ready. This, as it says, may take a few minutes. It will. But once this process has completed, you should find us into our Windows desktop. Okay, so we're into the desktop. Windows 10, of course, on the left, Windows 11 on the right. Now, there obviously are a couple of differences, and the main differences that you're really going to see as we sort of poke about the interface here on Windows 11 is going to be the difference in the interface. It seems a lot like Windows 10 at this point, at least in this very early release, has had pretty much a lick of paint, and it's kind of different in just a few subtle ways, and most of these are aesthetic. So on the left-hand side, obviously, Windows 10, if we click the Start button, we've got the tiled interface and obviously this list view that we've kind of been used to for a long time. The main difference here, of course, is this has now been moved to the middle, and the icons that we get certainly look a lot healthier. We're sort of really venturing into what the Mac kind of looks like, with its centralized dock. And look, I really kind of like the Mac, to be completely honest. And so as a result, I'm quite welcoming this change. And if, by the way, you do really hate these icons here being in the middle, you can certainly change that. We can right click here on our taskbar, and do note that when we right click on a taskbar over here, we've got a whole bunch of options. Now, again, this is obviously a very early pre-release copy. So presumably this sort of stuff is going to change. But for now, we've got the one option, taskbar settings. And because this is a fresh install, we've just seen us install this, a lot of the stuff here we can't actually change until we do activate Windows. So I'm going to do that, but before I do, you will note here that the very first option is the taskbar alignment, and it's currently set to center, which is, of course, is why all of our icons are here in the middle. So if we drop that box down, we will have an option to put them back to the left as per standard Windows 10 on the left. So I'm going to activate this just to unlock everything. That'll obviously require me to populate this with a Windows key. So I'll do that, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so we've activated this copy, and now what we'll be able to see if we just go back is our taskbar alignment options. We can now move it back obviously to the left. So that's a bit normal. what we're used to, but I'm going to pop it in the center because, you know, that's the new way of doing things with Windows 11. Now, I'm just going to close this for now. I'm going to go through some of these options in a minute, but I just really want to poke around the interface because I think that's what a lot of you guys who'd be watching this would really want to be looking for. So first of all, I'm going to open up Windows Explorer here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to do the same on the right-hand side. Now, the main thing that you're going to notice immediately is the fact that the icons have changed. Well, okay, again, that's cosmetic. It's not really going to affect too much. But the other thing is going to be the animations of our windows. So if I bring this up to the top, you'll see this little ghosting effect here that's going to appear in the background. And so as it sort of wants to expand, and if I let that go, obviously it's just going to expand and fill out the window. But one of the other things that we can do with Windows 11, in fact, you'll notice here on the left-hand side, a little bit different there. One of the things we could do with Windows 11 also is to bring it to the left, and it'll expand out to a left half of our screen. We could do it to the right, do the same sort of thing. We bring it up into the corner, and it's going to allow the applications to go in a quadrant. If we do this with Windows 10, we just get a full screen. So we've got a couple more options there, which is kind of cool. So if we quickly just open up another application, let's open up Microsoft Edge. Okay, and let's just minimize that. If I take this application and now move it up to the top right corner, you can see it's given me kind of like a little thumbnail. So it's kind of asking me what I want to do with my other application that's open. So if I click that, it's going to take on this other quadrant. And again, if I had another application open, I could take this quadrant. So it's pretty cool if you do like to take your applications and spread them out across your desktop in that way. There used to be Power Toys you could download to do those sorts of things. So now it's nice to see that it's actually built in, but it does go one step further. If we hover our mouse here over the maximize button, you can see that it now pops out this little thumbnail view, if you like. And that allows us to quickly just change the layout of our window to something else. So in this case, you can see we're doing it in quadrants. If we actually select this one, it's going to take up half the screen. So we can easily do the same thing over here. We can just hover our mouse over and we'll hit the left. And you can see that's justified ours to the left. Obviously, if we were to select the complete one, you'll notice that we did select two different sizes here. You'll see that it's filled that in. So that's pretty cool. It's a nice little way of cutting up your screen if you like. If you've got a big wide screen, for example, really like that feature. What else have we got on here? So let's just minimize this. One of the other things you'll notice when we hit the start button is we've now got these rounded edges again. Really a lot like a Mac. I think, again, looks pretty cool. Obviously, our shutdown icons and everything that was sort of over here on the left is now over here on the right. And again, we do have a couple of little buttons here. So if I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse, you can see we can scroll down to see subsequent pages. If we want this list view again that we see here on Windows 10, we've just got to simply choose all apps. And we've got the same sort of list. Now, as for keyboard shortcuts, most of the keyboard shortcuts are very, very similar. So for example, one of the things that is quite popular on a Mac system is using the inbuilt Spotlight search, and that's to search on the system-wide. In our case, if we just hold down the Windows key on our keyboard and hit the letter Q, that's going to pop up search on Windows 11. And on Windows 10, you can see exactly the same thing, just looks a little nicer here on Windows 11, in my opinion. But we could also do the same thing by holding down the Windows key and hitting the letter S, which is a little bit more relatable, Windows and S for search. I think that's probably more logical than Windows and Q. If we open up Windows and the letter U on our keyboard, that's going to open up the user interface for our display settings. And if we open up Windows and the letter I, that's going to open up Windows settings. Again, same sort of thing over here on Windows 10. Now, Windows and the letter X is just like right-clicking on your Start button, and over here on Windows 11, same sort of thing. Now, Windows and the letter A is going to open up our notifications, and the same again, that is the exact same on Windows 10. Windows and the letter H is going to open up the speech services for Windows 11, but on Windows 10, Windows and H really looks kind of ugly. Sort of something from Windows 95. So the efforts that they put into at least this particular dialogue, well, it looks a lot nicer. Now, Windows and the letter F is for feedback, so you'll notice that it actually just took a screenshot. That's one of the cool things. And one thing that I actually will say is there have been times I've used like the snipping tool under Windows and it hasn't quite worked. It's very rare, mind you. It's generally pretty good, but sometimes it doesn't work. If it never works, we use Windows and the F key. Now, in Windows 10, if we were to hold down the Windows key and hit the letter W, in fact, let's just get rid of these so we can see what we're doing. Windows and W gives us the option for the Windows whiteboard and our full screen snipping tool. Over here on Windows 11, that same keyboard shortcut, Windows and W, is now going to open up Widgets. So that's also going to be the same thing if we actually click this little icon. In fact, excuse me, this icon right here. This one here is something totally different. But if we click this icon here, you'll see our widgets view appears, and that's presumably going to be an area where Microsoft are going to put a bit of stock into at the moment. Widgets, I mean, they sort of came in earlier versions of like Vista. God, if you can remember Vista, that was a gem. And now we sort of lost them, and now they've made a comeback. I mean, we've got Android with widgets, we've got iOS with widgets. Why not Microsoft? Well done. So here we are. We've got obviously just a few default widgets here, whether some money, obviously the football, which is great, and a whole bunch of different news things. And of course, if you click these little dots, you can go off to Microsoft's site here at msn.com and, add in whatever preferences you like. Now, naturally, one of the things with Windows 10, when you open up an application, you get a little sort of ghosted out square over that icon. Here with Windows 10, you'll notice we get a little underline. But one of the other things happens if we make an application to the foreground for actually actively using it. You'll see that that is blue, whereas the others go grey when they're not being used. In the case of Windows 10, you'll see that they really look the same with the exact same underline. So no real distinction there. So look, there's been a few little subtle changes we're seeing here with Windows 11 that, look, to my personal opinion, I think they look great. I really do. But look, it's going to take a lot to win over the masses. Moving a bunch of icons to the middle kind of really is a bit of a weak upgrade, at least at this point. But let's dive in a little bit further, because obviously there are changes yet again. A lot of them are subtle. Things like you notice that it installed quicker than Windows 10. Okay, well, that's a big deal, but you only install it once, right? I mean, we really want to know what the performance is going to be. But bear in mind, this is a very early version of Windows 11. Who knows what the performance is going to be? But I must admit, in the basic tests that I've done, running a few applications here and there, it's performed exactly the same as Windows 10. So look, the jury's going to be out. We're going to be waiting. Believe it or not, it's June 24th where Microsoft are going to announce Windows 11. Now, one other thing to point out, which is obviously pretty obvious if you're paying attention here, is that our taskbar now is a little bit taller. We can see 3 lines of text here, particularly for this date area, instead of the 2 lines there. We can right-click and choose our taskbar settings. Comparing with Windows 10, you can see most of these options are kind of the same, with the exception, obviously, of aligning everything to the center and showing the widgets, because that's kind of new. And the desktop button, this is actually a new feature, ironically, and it's to do with this little sliver, if you like, on the taskbar on the bottom right there. Because what that does, if you click it, it's going to minimize all the applications and simply show the desktop. So if we click this to turn it off, you'll just see it disappear down here. Again, something which, well, never really bothered me. I kind of liked having it there, to be completely honest, but I know it annoyed a lot of people, and Microsoft obviously have listened to that feedback and allowed you to get rid of it. So automatically hide the taskbar in desktop mode. That's the same. Show badges on the taskbar. We could use small taskbar buttons. Here we've got one to show badges on the taskbar buttons. And look, a lot of the other icons here are very similar. Do we want to show our task view button? Do we want to have our search button here as well? Again, you can turn that off. Now, one of the cool things we can do from here, which may not be quite apparent, is if we hit the Start option here, we could also choose which folders appear on Start. So when we click Start, we're talking about this little area down here. Now, right now, you can see it's pretty much blank. If we come back here to our settings, we could choose to have Windows Explorer. In fact, let's just choose a whole bunch of them and turn them on. Why not? And now if we click Start, you're going to see a bunch of icons here. So that's going to give you quick access, if you like, to some of those important functions. Now, sadly, notifications doesn't look to have changed too much from this screen. Certainly, it looks very much the same. I'll be interested to see if that changes when we do actually have a final copy. Now, for our clipboard, it looks like Windows 10 and Windows 11 haven't really changed there. This is actually a feature which I don't see a lot of people using, which is to have multiple items saved to your clipboard. I think it's a brilliant thing. Love turning that one on. It's going to be very similar on Windows 10, but the whole point being is if we open up an application like Notepad, let's just say, and we just type in something and we copy that to our clipboard, and then we type something else and we copy that to our clipboard, and then we type another thing and we copy that to our clipboard. If we then hit, instead of Control and V, which is just simply going to paste in the last thing that we copied to the clipboard, if we hit the Windows key and V, it's going to pop up a list of all of the things that we've done. So we've maintained a clipboard history. Now, this isn't something which is new with Windows 11. However, on Windows 10, if we just take a quick look at this, let's just copy something. You will notice here on the Windows 11 side of things that we have our clipboard history, but we've also got access to other things like symbols, we've got the K-emojis, we've got GIFs. You know, there's a whole bunch of other things now that we can actually access from this service. So even though the basic functionality of using the Windows key and obviously the letter V, which is going to bring up a history of our clipboard, which is awesome, this is something which we did another video on how to use the emoji keyboard, and we included Windows 10 and obviously the Mac for that too. But you can see that's now been built into here. So that's kind of cool because I always used to forget, even though I did a video on it on how to do it. It always was one of those things that really slipped my mind, but now it's all been built into the Windows key and the letter V. So instead of Control V for pasting like we've always done forever and a day, we're now going to start using the Windows key and V because you're basically getting a clipboard on steroids. So really, even if you're on Windows 10 right now, it's something that I would recommend that you go and have a look at, because one of the other cool things actually you can do with this is you can actually then pin things to the top. And what that's going to do, if we clear everything, it's going to keep one of these things here in memory. And whilst that's cool is because even if you shut your PC down and you come back another day, this thing here is still going to remain on your clipboard. So if you have a piece of code or an auto signature or something that you run every single day and you're always doing it, you can just save it to the clipboard in this persistent state, come back tomorrow, and it's still going to be there. So use that feature. I probably should have done a video on that all by itself, but I never got round to it, so I'm doing it now. So if you're watching this video, do make sure that you take a look at this persistent clipboard because it's really, really a cool idea. Again, nothing new with Windows 11. That was on Windows 10, although, as I said, the emoji stuff has kind of been now all blended in together. So that's pretty nice. And again, of course, you will notice other little things have changed. The little icons here have changed, obviously, for some of our applications.
Now, one of the key differences you'll really notice about Windows 11 versus Windows 10, and let's just switch to a view here in our documents. Let's just do that. And I'm going to demonstrate this by creating a new bitmap image here. And because we're synced with OneDrive, you should see in a second, there you go, it's already updated there. And if you're not using OneDrive, if you're not a user of the product, then you may not really understand what these icons here really represent. So the green icon here represents that this is a local file that I've installed, or created rather, on this particular computer, on this Windows 11 computer. Over here on the left, we've got the little cloud icon, which obviously is indicating that it's coming from the cloud, in this case, OneDrive. So one thing you will notice is that if we right click on this file, and then we over here on Windows 11, we right click on that file, we will have a few subtle differences. So for example, up here you can see we can open, we can create, we can edit with photos. Over here we can edit with Paint 3D. That's a difference right there. We can set it as a background picture, and obviously because that is a picture, we can print it. Over here we do get the edit menu. We can rotate it, we can cast it to a device like Chromecast or something like that. We can also share it, view it online, blah, blah, blah. We can free up space here on Windows 11. That's grayed out on Windows 10. But we can also scan it with Microsoft Defender, again, because it's a local file. It's not one that's out there in the cloud. However, if we were to change this and right-click on this text document, which is local to this machine, you'll see now we do get the option to scan it with Microsoft Defender, just like we do over here on Windows 11. So there's a couple of little things to be aware of. However, that wasn't the purpose of creating another file. Really, the purpose was to show you obviously the spacing difference that we've got here between the two operating systems. Windows 11 is clearly using up a lot more space. And again, that's just a little UI change. But if you don't like that and you want to maximize your space, we can simply come up to our View menu here in Windows Explorer. Choose Options, a little drop down here, and change Folder and Search Options. Go to the View menu and choose this option here to decrease the space between the items, so to do a compact view. So if I just move this over a little bit and click that, click Apply, you'll see everything sort of comes back to normal as you'd expect to see it over here with Windows 10. So if you don't like the space, well, you can change it back. And personally, I kind of like the more condensed space, mainly because that's kind of what I'm used to. And you know, screen's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but, you know, we're always trying to cram as much as we can. Sometimes less is more, but look, you have the option if you like it. I'm just going to leave it back at the defaults here just so you can see what Microsoft want you to see. But look, when it comes to a production copy of Windows 11, I think I'm probably going to change it back. But look, who knows? First world problems, right? Now, one other thing that I did notice about Windows 11 is if you right-click somewhere in an Explorer window or on the desktop, you do get an option here now to open Windows Terminal. Now, if you're not a Windows Terminal user, and a lot of you listening probably aren't, this is kind of like a new method of launching a different shell. So a shell on, well, any version of Windows really, is going to be something like your Windows Command Prompt or Windows PowerShell. That kind of name kind of gives it away. PowerShell, this is a terminal which is designed to run a different shell. So in this case, when we load it up, it defaults to Windows PowerShell, and that's probably a good idea because Windows PowerShell is really, really nice. And if we do click over here to this little tab icon here, and it drops down, we get an option of launching the regular command prompt. We can launch an Azure shell. And if we install other third-party shells like Linux subsystem, for example, we'll be able to run that from here too. So it kind of gives you a one-stop place for running all of the shells that you might use, you know, when you go about your business. Whereas over here on the Windows 10 side, if we were simply to type in terminal, well, what we get back is a command prompt. In fact, if we do the same thing over here and type in terminal on Windows 11, we get obviously the option of doing a command prompt like we did here with Windows 10, which we of course can launch, and you can see they are kind of identical. But we do also have the option of launching this one here, which is nice because it allows us to obviously launch a bunch of different shells, but also to have them tabbed here. So if I just do that and click that, you're going to see the new ones just pop up, and there you go. We can switch between, you know, systems that we might be interacting with at the same time. So probably something more for people who are administrating a lot of machines. That's going to be pretty cool. I really do like that feature. So one other thing we probably should look at is also, well, we can see the version of Windows that we're using. If we just type in WinVer, you see we're using Windows 11 there. Obviously Windows 10 on the left. So not really much to look at. All you can see is the build numbers, which is fine. You can see it's obviously a development build. And look, the reality is most of the other things about Windows 11 really are cosmetic. For example, if we right-click here, look at the Task Manager, and well, obviously we can't right-click here and look at the Task Manager. That simply doesn't exist here in this version yet. Now we can use the keyboard shortcut of Control, Shift, and Escape, and that's going to launch it as well. But looking at these two task managers, I mean, we're not really sort of seeing any major difference here, just a kind of subtle change in the window. But that's really about it. And I guess that's really the story at this point of Windows 11 versus Windows 10. Everything's largely cosmetic. You know, we've moved the icons to the middle. We've got some, you know, new desktops. We've got some new widgets. You know, they look cool. I think most people will like them. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to complain about them, but I think there's, you know, a few nice little changes. Personally, I don't see it's enough of a change to call it Windows 11. You know, maybe it should have been Windows 10 point whatever, but hey, you know, this is Microsoft. That's what they're doing with their product. It's Windows 11. We're going to get it hopefully soon, I guess. And look, it's built on the back of obviously what is really quite a successful Windows 10. I know there's a lot of people who are going to disagree with that because, you know, everyone has their problems. That's Windows. It's always been Windows. There's always a group of people who hate it and have a lot of problems, and there's a group of people who love it and it works great. And I tend to fall into the latter. I've always had a love-hate relationship with Windows, but mostly love relationship with Windows. It's always been pretty good. I love the Mac, and I do see some of what's really great in the Mac coming across to Windows. And quite frankly, I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But look, it is what it is. I hate that saying. It is what it is, but it is. And it's really just Windows with a lick of paint. Now, again, it is a development version. We are going to see more changes come through, I hope. Now, you'll recall that when we installed both of these operating systems, there was an option there to set it up for games and for news and things like that. Now, what that's actually done is when we click Start on our Windows 11 box here, you'll notice that when we selected Business, for example, it's given us this Office icon. When we selected Games, we've got Xbox Solitaire. And when we selected, you know, other things. Now, what you'll notice is some of these applications, they're not actually installed here on Windows 11. They're kind of placeholders for something you can install. So, for example, if we were to look at, say, Photoshop Elements isn't an application that's ordinarily comes packaged with Windows, but it's here because we did indicate there were certain things that we wanted to set up this machine for. So if we select this, you'll see it actually starts to download that particular application. So this Photoshop Elements application is obviously a free condensed version of the real Photoshop. So it's going to give that to us for free. So once this is downloaded, that will then be available for us to use. Same sort of thing with Spotify. Let's click that and you can see we're going to get a progress bar for installing that as well. Now, there are a couple of other changes that you're going to see, and these are all dotted around the operating system. So they're going to be things like, very much things that are inside our control panel, where there's a couple of little like radio buttons or something which slightly differ. Now, one of the things that I did notice that differs is in the management of disks and in the displaying, if you like, of some of the tools that come with Windows. So over here on the left, if we were to just type in tools, for example, we would get an option here to launch the Windows administrative tools. And some of you more advanced users would recognize some of the things in here. And over on this side, if we type in tools, and there you go, we can see our Photoshop Express just got installed. If we were to open up Windows Tools this time, and let's just make this a list view so it kind of looks similar, you'll see some of the stuff that's in Windows 11 is the same that's over here in Windows 10, but we also have some different stuff as well. And most of the things that you're going to see in here are probably things that come built into the control panel anyway. So we do have a link to that, of course, so we could double click on that and it's going to go back into the kind of familiar control panel you might be used to from Windows 7. And that's kind of nice. Icons have changed a little bit, but you know, everything's kind of the same. But one of the things that I did notice was different is in the disk management. So here we can launch disk management by simply going into computer management if we like. and coming here to disk management, we can launch it as its own separate kind of snap-in. And obviously on Windows 10, same sort of deal. Let's launch that and go into our disk management, and we'll be able to see all the drives that we have in this machine. So I've got a 200 gig C drive, if you like, and a DVD-ROM, and these are obviously just virtual machines, so they're identical in this particular case. But over here, if we come and type in disk, and we've got an option here to manage our disks and volumes, and that's going to launch into its own separate kind of control panel thing for managing our disks, obviously. So we can see, look, because these are kind of identical, they're telling us the same thing. We've got a virtual hard disk of 200 gig, and it's separated into a 50 meg system partition. We've got 199 gig C drive and what you see here. But if we click on one of these, you can see we've got the option to, explore it, which is open up Windows Explorer to that drive. We can take a look at the properties, and in here is where you can actually then modify some of this stuff. So you could change the size of it. So if I wanted to make this drive smaller, that way I could potentially create an additional drive like a D drive or E drive or something like that. If I really wanted to do that, I could format it, I could delete it. I can add an additional mount point to this drive. I can also turn on BitLocker and encrypt this drive if I like. So it's kind of a simplified way of dealing with our drives. But personally, I would stick with the original computer management version just because that's kind of like what I'm used to. This is kind of oversimplified, but great for home users who might want to make a change, such as just change the name of the drive. So that's a new feature. Now in Windows 10, we had the ability, or do have the ability, to create multiple desktops. And to do that, we'd simply click on the task view icon. Up the top, we'd choose new desktop. And there we have multiple desktops. And we can create, as many as we like. Now, what this does is gives us the ability to launch an application. And now to pick up this application and drop it into a different desktop. So we can keep all our games running in one desktop, for example, and our work running in a totally separate one. So you can see here, Microsoft Edge that I just opened up doesn't show in this particular desktop. So if we go back over here, go to desktop number 3, and there you go, we can see we're currently running, obviously, this application. So that's pretty cool, gives you a way of separating, if you like, work from play or whatever you like to do. Maybe you're doing some graphic work and you do that in one desktop, and then you do some of your coding in a different desktop, whatever takes your fancy. But in Windows 11, Microsoft have given that a lick of paint again. So we've got our little task view icon, which is, I think, a little bit of a nicer icon. So let's click that. You'll notice it now appears down the bottom. So we've got the one original desktop. Again, we can create multiple desktops if we like. But if we right click here, one of the cool things we now can do is choose a different background. And it seems like such a simple thing, but sometimes you just want to be able to differentiate your coding background from your games background from your corporate one, for example. Maybe you do a lot of Zoom meetings and you want your corporate logo on your background, but then you want a photo of your family on a separate one, or your favorite game, whatever it may be. But now we can choose a different background picture, and you can see there it is. If we go to our desktops, well, I've now got a separate background here. So even though that's a minor touch, as far as I'm concerned, I think that's a wonderful touch. It's something that a lot of people have been screaming out for, and I think a lot of people are going to be pretty happy about that feature. So in addition, we can rename our desktop. We can move it left and right, which is just simply the same as picking it up and dragging it over here anyway. But we can simply do that. And obviously we could close it as well. In the Windows 10 way of doing things, well, we didn't quite get those options. We got the ability to rename it. But, we couldn't kind of move everything around in the same way we have the flexibility with Windows 11. Now, one other thing I did notice that when you hit the Windows key and the letter T to tab, that's going to tab over through your icons here. It's going to ignore these first 4 icons and just start tabbing through your actual application icons. On Windows 10, exactly the same thing. It's simply going to cycle through the same tabs. It's going to ignore our start button over here. It's going to ignore Cortana. I think everyone ignores Cortana. And it's going to ignore the task view and just simply cycle through those. On Windows 11, exactly the same thing. So there we have it, Windows 11, the early developer build, if you like. And I think it's great. I'm welcoming these new changes. They probably could have been changes done in a service pack, but, hey, Microsoft are going to call it Windows 11. That's what it is. So as we inch closer to a final release of this product, or we get newer builds, I'll come back and I'll do some videos and present those to you guys so you can be aware of what's coming. And let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think this new Windows 11 is going to be a game changer? Is it just more of the same? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Whatever you guys think. Feel free to leave your comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and we're going to see you guys back here for some more Windows 11 stuff. Have a wonderful day.